What if everything you've been told about facing life's challenges is backwards? Stoicism isn't about passive endurance, it's a weapon for aggressive self-mastery, a way to turn every obstacle into an advantage. Think about Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, who wrote, "The obstacle is the way." He didn't see setbacks as roadblocks, he saw them as fuel. That's the mindset we're diving into today, not just surviving life's hurdles, but using them to become unstoppable. Picture this: every time you felt crushed by pressure, overwhelmed by failure, or paralyzed by fear, there was another path, one where those very struggles became your leverage. Stoicism teaches us to sharpen our focus, harness resilience, and take relentless action, no matter what life throws at us. This isn't about wishful thinking or empty motivation. It's about training your mind to see opportunity where others see defeat. What if your biggest challenges weren't just something to overcome, but the exact things that could propel you further than you ever imagined? That's the aggressive Stoic mindset, a way of thinking that doesn't just accept adversity but charges straight into it, knowing that on the other side lies strength, clarity, and unshakable confidence. Whether you're facing a personal loss, a professional setback, or simply the daily grind of life, this philosophy gives you the tools to not just endure but dominate. Over the next few minutes, we're going to break down how you can apply these ancient principles to modern life, transforming your struggles into your greatest victories. This isn't about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning to dance in the rain and then using that storm as the wind beneath your wings. Ready? Let's begin. Epictetus laid down the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy with one brutal truth: some things are up to us and some things are not. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think this idea is about passive acceptance. The aggressive Stoic doesn't just recognize control, they weaponize it. Imagine two people stuck in traffic. One white knuckles the steering wheel, seething at every red light. The other uses the time to listen to an audiobook or plan their day. Same circumstance, radically different outcomes. That's the dichotomy of control in action. It's not just a filter for what you ignore, but a lens for what you exploit. Take a career setback, maybe a promotion you deserved went to someone else. The reactive mindset obsesses over the unfairness, the office politics, the things forever outside their influence. The aggressive Stoic, they zero in on what's theirs to command, sharpening their skills, expanding their network, or even exploring new opportunities. Epictetus put it perfectly: we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond. That choice isn't just about keeping your cool, it's about redirecting energy toward what actually moves the needle. So here's a challenge: pinpoint one thing gnawing at you right now that's utterly beyond your control. The weather, a past mistake, someone else's opinion. Now ask yourself, what's the hidden move here? Maybe it's preparing for rain instead of cursing the clouds. Maybe it's mining that old failure for lessons instead of reliving the regret. This is the shift from seeing control as a limitation to wielding it as leverage. Because when you stop wasting energy on the uncontrollable, you free up reserves to dominate everything that is yours to shape. That's not just resilience. That's strategy. Marcus Aurelius wrote those words from the front lines of battle, not in the comfort of a palace, but in the mud and chaos of war. That's the essence of the Stoic pivot. When life knocks you down, you don't just get up, you use the leverage of the fall to spring forward. Take Seneca, one of history's greatest Stoic thinkers. Exiled to a barren island by a jealous emperor, he could have wallowed in self-pity. Instead, he turned isolation into his golden age of writing, producing works that would outlive the empire that banished him. His obstacle didn't break him, it built him. Here's the brutal beauty of this mindset: the very thing that seems to block your path is the path, a failed business venture. That's not just loss, it's a masterclass in what not to do next time. A health setback, it's forcing you to rebuild smarter, stronger. Even daily frustrations, traffic jams, petty conflicts, delayed plans are rehearsals for resilience. Think of them like a boxer's sparring partner. The more they hit you, the more you learn to dodge, counter, and grow. So let's make this practical. Look at the hurdle weighing on you right now. What if it's not a barrier but a doorway? If you're drowning in work, maybe it's revealing where to delegate or automate. If you're stuck in a creative rut, perhaps it's a sign to consume less and create more. The Stoics didn't just tolerate adversity, they mined it for hidden advantages. Your current struggle isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. The question isn't whether you'll face obstacles. It's whether you'll let them define you or refine you. This pivot isn't about positive thinking, it's about strategic thinking. Marcus didn't say the impediment becomes action, he said it advances action. That's the key. The obstacle itself becomes fuel for your next move. A rejection letter, proof you're aiming high enough, a financial squeeze, a crash course in resourcefulness. Every great innovator, athlete, or leader has one thing in common. They didn't avoid friction, they used it to sharpen their edge. Your turn. Seneca called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. At first glance, it sounds grim, like rehearsing disaster. But here's the paradox: visualizing the worst isn't about fear, it's about liberation. Picture a rock climber mentally practicing every slip, every frayed rope before they even touch the wall. By confronting the worst-case scenario in advance, they strip it of its power. That's the secret. Fear thrives in the unknown. But when you've already walked through the fire in your mind, the actual flames lose their bite. Consider how elite athletes use this tool. A sprinter doesn't just visualize winning, they imagine false starts, stumbles, even rivals pulling ahead. Why? Because when the moment comes, there's no panic, only preparation meeting opportunity. Seneca put it bluntly: he who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. In other words, drowning in what-ifs is pointless, but strategically mapping them out, that's how you turn anxiety into armor. Let's take this out of theory and into your life. Say you're launching a business. The reactive approach is to obsess over success while avoiding thoughts of failure. The aggressive Stoic, they draft a disaster plan before the first dollar is earned. What if the market shifts? What if a key partner walks away? By answering these questions now, you're not inviting failure, you're defanging it. When setback's shadow looms, you're already holding the flashlight. So here's your challenge. Pick your biggest goal right now, the one that keeps you up at night. Now flip the script. What's the worst that could realistically happen? Maybe it's a rejected proposal, a missed deadline, or a public stumble. Now ask, how would I pivot? That's your plan B, not as a backup, but as a battering ram against uncertainty. Because when you've already faced the monster under the bed, you realize it was never a monster at all, just another hurdle waiting to be cleared. This isn't pessimism. It's the ultimate optimism, the belief that no matter what comes, you're ready. The Stoics didn't dwell on darkness to scare themselves. They did it to prove the light was always theirs to switch on. Your turn. What's the worst you're avoiding? And more importantly, what's the hidden strength you'll find when you stare it down? Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who endured exile and persecution, had a radical take on hardship. It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. Notice he didn't say if you react, he said how. That single word holds the key to Stoic resilience. Every setback offers a fork in the road. One path leads to victimhood, where you dwell on unfairness. The other leads to victory, where you dissect the problem for solutions. Look at modern entrepreneurs. The ones who last aren't those who avoid failure. They're the ones who treat each crash as data, each no as navigation. Take the founder of a now billion-dollar company who faced 14 rejections before securing funding. They could have spun a sob story about investors not getting it. Instead, they refined their pitch after each rejection, turning "this won't work" into "show me the numbers," until the 15th meeting landed the check. That's the Stoic edge: zero time wasted on "why me," all energy funneled into what's next. Musonius knew this firsthand. Banished to a desolate island, he didn't lament his fate, he turned the rocky soil into a classroom, teaching students who trekked through wilderness to learn from him. The obstacle didn't just become the way, it built the way. So let's cut to the chase. Where in your life are you narrating hardship as a tragedy instead of a training montage? That coworker who undermines you, either they're a nuisance or a crash course in diplomacy, your framing decides, the project that crashed and burned. It's either proof you're doomed or the prototype for your next breakthrough. Stoicism strips away the luxury of victimhood because it's not about what you endure, it's about what you extract. Musonius put it bluntly: endurance isn't the absence of suffering, it's the alchemy of turning suffering into skill. Here's the litmus test. The next time life throws a punch, ask, am I complaining or correcting? If you're tallying grievances, you're borrowing trouble. If you're reverse engineering the problem, you're banking resilience, because every hardship comes with hidden equity, the kind that compounds over time. The entrepreneur who fails forward isn't lucky, they're strategic. The Stoic who endures isn't passive, they're gathering torque. Your struggles aren't here to break you. They're here to build the person who doesn't break. Amor, Fati, Latin for love of fate, isn't just about accepting life's blows, it's about embracing them like a fighter embracing their toughest opponent. Nietzsche, the philosopher who sharpened this Stoic blade, didn't see fate as something to endure but as something to crave. Picture a boxer in the ring. Every punch thrown at them isn't just a test, it's a gift, a chance to learn, adapt, and grow stronger. That's the core of Amor Fati. It's not passive resignation, it's active hunger for the fights that forge you. Take Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL who reframes every setback with a single word: good. Mission cancelled, good, more time to train. Equipment failure, good, we'll improvise. It's not toxic positivity, it's tactical reframing. Willink's mindset mirrors Marcus Aurelius's words: accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny. Notice the word woven. Your struggles aren't random threads, they're part of the fabric you're meant to wear, a design tailored to make you resilient. Think of a time you faced a crushing disappointment, a job loss, a betrayal, a dream derailed. In the moment, it felt like a wound, but looking back, didn't it force you to pivot towards something unexpected? Maybe that layoff pushed you to start a business. Maybe that heartbreak taught you self-worth. Amor Fati flips the script. Instead of asking why me, you ask what now and mean it. Here's the challenge: pick one battle you're currently resisting, a grueling project, a strained relationship, a personal flaw. Now imagine treating it like a sparring partner. What's it teaching you? Patience, resilience, creativity. The Stoics didn't just tolerate their trials, they mined them for gold. Marcus didn't write his meditations on a throne, he wrote them in war camps, in grief, in chaos. His obstacles weren't distractions from his destiny, they were the raw materials of it. So don't just endure your struggles, study them, love them, because the moments that feel like setbacks are often the ones setting you up for a comeback you can't yet see. Amor Fati isn't about pretending life's easy, it's about knowing that the hard parts are the ones that make you, and refusing to settle for anything less. Cleans, the Stoic philosopher who carried water by night to fund his studies, didn't have time for overthinking, he had work to do. His life embodied a truth modern productivity gurus are still catching up to. Speed isn't reckless when it's disciplined. Picture a Navy SEAL mid-mission. When the bullets fly, there's no committee meeting to debate options, just the 40% rule in action. When your brain screams you're exhausted, you've still got 60% left in the tank. That's the Stoic difference between hesitation and execution. Analysis has its place, but at some point, thinking becomes the obstacle. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly: first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Notice the order: clarity first, motion second, not clarity 10th after endless second guessing. The aggressive Stoic doesn't wait for perfect conditions, they create them through action. Take Cleans again. While other philosophers debated abstract ideals, he was hauling water, studying by lamplight, turning theory into calloused hands and a sharp mind. His philosophy wasn't just spoken, it was sweat-earned. Here's where most people stall. They treat preparation like a safety net when it's often a trap. Researching a business idea for years becomes an excuse never to launch. Waiting for the right moment to apologize lets resentment grow roots. Paralysis by analysis isn't caution, it's fear in a lab coat. The Stoics knew this. Seneca warned that postponement is the thief of life, while Epictetus mocked those who plaster their walls with books yet never act on what they've learned. So let's get tactical. Where in your life are you mistaking motion for progress, scrolling through productivity tips instead of starting the project? Gathering opinions instead of making the decision? Here's the litmus test. If you've circled an idea more than 3 times, you're not refining, you're avoiding. Speed doesn't mean skipping steps, it means refusing to loop them. Like a chef who preps ingredients before service, the Stoic lays the groundwork precisely so they can act decisively when it's time. This isn't about impulsivity, it's about the razor's edge between readiness and delay. The Navy SEAL doesn't charge blindly, they train relentlessly so instinct takes over when it counts. Cleans didn't abandon study, he just refused to let it become an endpoint. Your turn. What's the one decision you've been kneading like dough? The Stoic move isn't to wait for certainty. It's to define your aim, then move knowing the path clarifies only after you start walking. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the Inner Citadel, a mental fortress where no external chaos could penetrate. This wasn't poetic imagery, it was a battle-tested strategy. Picture a general besieged by enemies, yet calmly issuing orders from an impenetrable stronghold. That's the Stoic mind at work. Today, we call this deep work, the ability to focus so intensely that distractions dissolve. Cal Newport's research on digital minimalism echoes this ancient wisdom. What you ignore determines what you create. Every notification silenced, every pointless scroll abandoned, is another brick in your inner citadel's walls. Take the founder of a billion-dollar startup who attributes their success to focus blocks 4-hour stretches with their phone locked in a safe. They're not just avoiding distractions, they're reinforcing mental sovereignty. Marcus put it bluntly: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Notice he didn't say control, he said power. Control implies the world bends to you. Power means you bend to yourself, regardless of the storm outside. That's the difference between wishing for peace and engineering it. Consider a writer on deadline with a buzzing group chat. The reactive mind sees obligation: I should respond. The Stoic sees sabotage: I should dominate this page first. Every time you resist the pull of trivial demands, you're not just preserving focus, you're declaring that your priorities are non-negotiable. Newport's digital minimalism isn't about owning fewer apps, it's about owning your attention. The Inner Citadel isn't built by grand gestures but by micro-victories. The 5 extra minutes of deep work when your brain begs for distraction, the email left unanswered until the important task is done. So here's the challenge. Identify one distraction that consistently hijacks your focus: the social media rabbit hole, the urgent but unimportant messages, the background noise you tolerate. Now channel Marcus: does this serve the person I'm becoming? If not, what's your version of the locked safe? The Stoics didn't conquer empires by reacting to every shout in the streets. They ruled their minds first, then everything else followed. Your turn. What's one intrusion you'll evict from your mental fortress today? Confidence isn't something you stumble into, it's something you forge. Seneca nailed it when he said, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." That's not a feel-good quote, it's a battle plan. Think about elite athletes. Their poise under pressure isn't magic. It's the result of thousands of hours spent in deliberate practice. When the game's on the line, they're not hoping they'll perform. They know they will because they've already faced every possible scenario in training. That's Stoic confidence, earned, not given, built on reps, not rhetoric. The modern world sells a cheap imitation, fake positivity that insists you just need to believe in yourself. But the Stoics would call that nonsense. Epictetus didn't tell his students to chant affirmations. He drilled them in logic, physics, and ethics until their minds were unshakable. Real confidence isn't about ignoring your weaknesses. It's about confronting them so relentlessly that they become strength. Take a concert violinist. Their flawless performance isn't born from ignoring mistakes. It's from dissecting every squeak and missed note in practice until there's no room left for doubt. Seneca's insight cuts deeper. Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Notice he didn't say difficulties disappear, he said they strengthen. That's the key. The weightlifter's confidence doesn't come from avoiding heavy loads. It comes from knowing they've already lifted heavier. The same applies to your mind. Every challenge you faced, every rejection, every failure, every moment of discomfort wasn't a setback. It was a deposit in your confidence bank. Withdraw from it often. Here's the uncomfortable question. What skill are you avoiding because it feels too hard, too slow, too exposing? Maybe it's public speaking, negotiation, or a technical skill that intimidates you. That's your growth zone, not because mastering it will make life easier, but because the process of mastering it will make you harder to break. The Stoics didn't wait for confidence to show up. They went out and built it brick by brick. Your turn. What's the one thing you'd be unstoppable at if you stopped avoiding the grind it requires? This isn't about blind courage. It's about the quiet certainty that comes from knowing you've done the work. Fake confidence shatters under pressure. Real confidence, it doesn't just endure pressure, it expects it because pressure is where preparation proves itself. The next time you feel doubt creeping in, ask yourself, have I put in the reps? If the answer's no, get back to work. If the answer's yes, step forward. The arena doesn't reward wishful thinking. It rewards those who have already fought the battle in their minds and won. Epictetus drew a line in the sand between two kinds of desires, those rooted in nature and those manufactured by vanity. The first are simple, sustainable, nourishment, shelter, human connection. The second are bottomless pits, status symbols, endless upgrades, the relentless chase for more disguised as progress. Picture two people standing before a sunset. One is fully present, soaking in the moment. The other is angling their phone for the perfect shot, already thinking about filters and likes. Both are looking at the same sky, but only one is truly seeing it. That's the discipline of desire in action, the choice to want what you already hold. Consider the minimalist who owns 50 carefully chosen items versus the consumerist drowning in 500 impulse buys. The paradox, the person with less often feels richer. Epictetus put it bluntly, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. He wasn't preaching poverty, he was highlighting a mental shift. When you stop equating possessions with worth, you unlock a different kind of abundance. The freedom to enjoy a meal without posting it, to wear a 10-year-old jacket without shame, to measure your life by experiences rather than receipts. History's most content figures, from Diogenes living in a barrel to modern CEOs wearing the same outfit daily, grasped this truth. Their power came from subtraction, not accumulation. Steve Jobs famously wore a black turtleneck not because he lacked options, but because he refused to waste mental energy on trivial choices. Every desire you prune isn't just a no to clutter, it's a yes to clarity. So here's the challenge. Identify one want you've been carrying that's more habit than necessity. Maybe it's the latest tech gadget you'll forget in a month, the wardrobe refresh chasing fleeting trends, or even the compulsive need to check metrics on your latest post. What if you deleted that desire entirely, not as deprivation but as liberation? The Stoics knew, when you stop chasing superfluous things, you start noticing the riches you've already had all along: time, peace, autonomy. The real luxury isn't owning more, it's being owned by less. This isn't about rejecting ambition, it's about redirecting it. Epictetus didn't say want nothing, he said want wisely. The disciplined desire isn't a shrinking of your life, it's an expansion of your freedom. Because when you're no longer hostage to endless wanting, you're finally free to pursue what truly matters. So ask yourself, what's one rope you're ready to cut, not because you have to, but because you're tired of tying yourself in knots? Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, didn't just teach brevity, he lived it. Legend has it he lost his entire fortune in a shipwreck, and when asked what he learned from the experience, he supposedly replied with just 3 words: to travel light. That's the power of Stoic silence, not just saying less, but letting actions carry the weight of your truth. Warren Buffett put it another way: empty cans rattle the loudest. The more someone boasts, postures, or promises, the less they've usually done. Contrast that with the quiet intensity of a surgeon scrubbing in, a programmer debugging through the night, or a parent working double shifts without fanfare. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's energy coiled tight, ready to spring. History's most formidable figures understood this. Einstein didn't announce he was revolutionizing physics. He buried himself in equations for years before relativity shook the world. Katherine Johnson, the NASA mathematician behind the moon landing, didn't give speeches about her genius. She crunched numbers in the background until her calculations spoke for themselves. Even in nature, the deadliest predators move in silence. Lions don't roar while hunting. The lesson: noise distracts, silence delivers. So where in your life are you substituting words for work? Maybe it's the business idea you've talked about for years but never launched, the fitness plan you announce every Monday only to abandon by Wednesday, or the endless debates about politics or philosophy that never translate into real change. The Stoics had a name for this: logos prophorikos, speech that's detached from action. It's not just useless, it's corrosive. Every time you verbalize a goal without taking a step, you trick your brain into feeling progress while standing still. Here's the pivot: for the next 24 hours, practice radical verbal economy. Before speaking, ask, is this necessary? Does it serve? Could this energy fuel action instead? Watch how your mind shifts when you redirect the effort spent on explaining, justifying, or narrating into pure motion. The sculptor doesn't debate the marble, they chip away until the form emerges. Zeno's shipwreck didn't just strip him of possessions, it taught him that the fewer words you waste, the more weight your actions carry. Your turn. What's one thing you'll stop announcing and start attacking today? Seneca's words cut deeper than most realize. Life is long if you know how to use it. The Stoics didn't just ponder death, they weaponized its inevitability to electrify the present. Imagine your time as an hourglass, grains slipping away not just yearly or monthly, but with every breath. Elon Musk's infamous 5-minute scheduling blocks aren't just efficiency hacks, they're mortal reminders in action. Each block is a defiance against the creeping complacency that tells us later is an option. Memento Mori on steroids isn't about morbidity, it's about momentum. Consider 2 people given the same terminal diagnosis. One spirals into despair, paralyzed by the looming end. The other launches the business they'd always postponed, repairs broken relationships, finally writes that novel. Same deadline, diametrically opposed outcomes. Why? The latter grasped Seneca's razor. You're dying every day, stop wasting the remains. The Stoic doesn't wait for expiration dates to live urgently. They treat every sunrise as a non-renewable resource. History's most prolific creators understood this. Mozart composed over 600 works before 35. Marie Curie pioneered radioactivity while battling chronic illness, and Steve Jobs famously asked himself each morning, "If today were my last, would I want to do what I'm about to?" These weren't just productivity tricks, they were death-powered compasses. When Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, he slashed projects not because they were bad, but because time was too precious to spread thin. Here's the gut check. What would you bulldoze off your calendar if you had 1 year left? Not 10, not 5, 1. The meetings that could be emails, the scroll sessions masquerading as relaxation. The grudges that stopped mattering years ago. Time mastery isn't about doing more. It's about cutting everything that doesn't scream aliveness. The Stoics didn't mince words. Our problem isn't short lives, but squandered hours. So flip the script. Don't just acknowledge mortality. Let it hijack your priorities. That project you've been getting to, start now badly. That conversation you've avoided, have it today, because the great irony is this: when you act like time's running out, you suddenly find there's enough of it not to do everything, but to do what throttles your soul awake. The sand's still falling. What's your next move? Musonius Rufus, the Stoic warrior philosopher, didn't just preach self-mastery. He lived it in exile, in poverty, under persecution. His lesson was simple yet radical. Your energy isn't just a resource, it's your currency, and every distraction is a tax. Fast forward to today, where the average person checks their phone 96 times daily. That's not just distraction, it's mental bankruptcy. Steve Jobs grasped this intuitively. His iconic black turtleneck wasn't a fashion statement, it was an energy-saving manifesto. By eliminating trivial choices, he preserved cognitive fuel for what actually mattered. The Stoics would have nodded in approval. No man is free who is not master of himself wasn't about control, it was about conservation. Think of your focus like a campfire in a windstorm. Every unnecessary notification, every open tab, every quick check is another gust scattering your flames. Meanwhile, the world's top performers, from Olympic athletes to Nobel laureates, operate like blacksmiths in a forge. They don't just work hard, they channel hard, directing every spark toward a single, white-hot objective. Cal Newport calls this deep work, but Musonius framed it more brutally. If you wish to be strong, spend your energy only where it counts. Here's the modern trap: we confuse activity with achievement. Scrolling through productivity hacks instead of doing the work, attending back-to-back meetings that could have been emails, even relaxing by binge-watching shows that leave us more drained than before. These aren't just time wasters, they're energy leaks. The Stoic remedy: ruthless prioritization. When the Roman general Fabius faced Hannibal's superior army, he didn't engage in petty skirmishes. He conserved his troops' strength for the decisive battle. Your mind deserves the same strategy, so here's the challenge. Audit your last 24 hours like a forensic accountant. Where did your mental cash flow go? The group chat that added zero value, the news cycle that only fueled outrage, the research rabbit hole that was really procrastination in disguise. Identify one drain you'll plug today, not temporarily, but permanently. Delete the app, set the boundary, silence the noise, because freedom isn't just about what you say yes to, it's about what you refuse to let in. Musonius didn't just teach this, he proved it. While others exhausted themselves in Roman politics, he turned a barren exile into a thriving school. His energy wasn't spent, it was invested. Your turn. What's the one leak you'll seal to keep your fire burning brighter and longer than anyone else's? Marcus Aurelius didn't just reflect on his day, he dissected it with surgical precision. Every night, he'd ask himself two brutal questions: where did I fall short, and how will I improve tomorrow? This wasn't self-flagellation, it was strategic self-auditing. Think of it like a CEO reviewing quarterly metrics, except the business is your character and the stakes are your legacy. Benjamin Franklin took it further, creating a spreadsheet of virtues long before Excel existed. 13 traits, 7 days, a ledger of checks and crosses, not to shame himself but to spot patterns. That's the power of Stoic metrics, turning introspection into data. Consider how elite athletes review game footage. They don't just shrug off missed shots, they tally them, analyze angles, measure reaction times. The Stoics did the same with their minds. Epictetus called it the discipline of ascent, tracking every time you surrendered to anger, procrastination, or vanity. Why? Because what gets measured gets mastered. A modern twist, the founder of a productivity app who logs not just tasks completed, but impulses resisted. Every time they ignore a distraction or pause before reacting, it goes in the win column. That's the evolution of Marcus' journal, not just noting failures, but quantifying growth. Here's the pivot. Most people track the wrong things, weight instead of discipline, bank balances instead of integrity. The Stoic metric is about aligning your scorecard with your soul. Take Franklin's temperance column. He wasn't counting calories, he was tallying moments of self-command. Silence measured words wasted on gossip versus wisdom shared. Even Marcus, ruling an empire, tracked his patience in meetings like a coach clocking rest periods between sprints. The lesson: judge yourself by standards that outlast the stock market. So let's get tactical. Grab a notebook or your phone. Choose one metric that mirrors the person you're becoming, not the person you are. Maybe it's hours spent in deep work instead of emails answered. Minutes of mindfulness over social media scrolls. The key is specificity. Be better is vague. 3 instances of pausing before reacting is actionable. History's most disciplined minds didn't rely on motivation. They built systems that made excellence inevitable. Marcus' words cut to the core: waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. B1. Tracking isn't about perfection, it's about direction. Franklin's ledger was full of crosses, yet he's remembered for his virtues, not his missteps. Why? Because the act of measuring plants a flag. This matters. Your nightly review isn't a confession, it's a blueprint. The data doesn't lie. Are you building a life of intention or drifting on autopilot? The pen's in your hand. What's your first entry? Epictetus dropped a truth bomb that still echoes 20 centuries later. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This isn't just social math, it's mental warfare. Think of your circle like a training camp. Are they Spartans forging you on the anvil of excellence, or spectators handing out excuses? History's most formidable minds didn't rise alone. Plato had Socrates, Michelangelo had Lorenzo de Medici, even Steve Jobs had his legendary reality distortion field team. The common thread: iron sharpens iron. Now contrast that with toxic alliances, the friend who subtly undermines your ambitions with realistic doubts, the co-worker who drags you into gossip instead of growth. These aren't just bad influences, they're cognitive saboteurs. Epictetus didn't say avoid weak people out of snobbery, he said do it out of self-preservation. Like a chef tasting every ingredient before it goes into the pot, you have to audit who's shaping your mindset. Take mastermind groups where high performers meet to dissect failures and strategize wins. Napoleon Hill called this the mastermind principle. When aligned thinkers collide, they create a third, unstoppable mind. Modern examples: the PayPal mafia. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel didn't just build a company, they cross-pollinated brilliance that birthed Tesla, LinkedIn, YouTube. That's the Stoic partnership blueprint: proximity to people who don't just tolerate your goals but challenge them. So here's the gut check: who's one person you've been giving energy to that dulls your edge? Maybe it's the roommate who turns every planning session into a complaint fest, or the relative who frames ambition as selfishness. Flip side: who's the Spartan missing from your life? The mentor you've been too intimidated to approach, the colleague whose discipline inspires you. Epictetus didn't mince words. Tell me who you spend time with and I'll tell you who you are. Your network isn't just your net worth, it's your neural wiring. Every conversation, every shared silence, every exchanged glance is either fortifying your inner citadel or chipping away at it. The Stoics didn't believe in lone wolves. They believed in packs that run toward the hunt. Time to ask, are your people dragging carcasses or carving paths? Musonius Rufus didn't just philosophize about virtue, he sweated for it. The Stoic teacher who endured exile and political persecution insisted that physical training wasn't optional, it was moral obligation. No man has the right to be an amateur in physical training, he declared. Fast forward 2,000 years and modern biohackers are proving him right, just with fewer sandals and more heart rate monitors. Take David Goggins, the Navy SEAL who turned his body into a resilience lab. His infamous routines from 100-mile runs to sub-zero swims aren't masochism, they're Musonius philosophy in motion. Every drop of sweat is a down payment on mental toughness, because here's the brutal truth your gym app won't tell you. When you master discomfort in your muscles, you inoculate your mind against excuses. The ancient Stoics knew what science now confirms. Your brain doesn't float separately from your biceps. Harvard studies show that regular exercise boosts the prefrontal cortex, the same region that governs willpower and emotional control. Marcus Aurelius didn't have fMRI scans, but he wrote, "Your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought." And for Stoics, those thoughts included physical discipline. Picture a gladiator in training. His sword drills weren't just about technique, they were neural wiring for poise under pressure. Modern equivalent, the entrepreneur who tackles cold showers and dawn workouts not to flaunt discipline but to forge it. When your body learns to push past barriers, your mind stops seeing them as unmovable. This isn't about six-pack abs or marathon times, it's about what Goggins calls callousing the mind. Every time you choose the heavier kettlebell or the extra mile, you're not just building stamina, you're rehearsing resilience. The CEO who wakes at 4:30 for a hill sprint isn't punishing herself. She's priming her nervous system to handle boardroom battles with the same grit. Stoic physique isn't aesthetics, it's anti-fragility. Like a blacksmith tempering steel, you're hammering your capacity to endure. So here's the challenge. Identify one physical upgrade that would ripple into your mindset. Maybe it's ditching the elevator to train your lungs and your patience, or swapping scrolling for sunrise mobility drills that lubricate both joints and creativity. The Stoics didn't separate gym from philosophy because they knew, when you command your body to hold a plank for 30 more seconds, you're also teaching your will to outlast temptation. Your muscles aren't just tissue, they're tutors in perseverance. What lesson do you need them to teach you next? Seneca called anger the cold fire, a contradiction that reveals its dual nature. Left unchecked, it burns indiscriminately, destroying relationships, clouding judgment, and leaving ashes of regret. But channeled with precision, it becomes the forge where resolve is tempered. Take Jordan Peterson's famous debate moments when critics misinterpreted his work. He didn't erupt in fury. He responded with what fans dubbed articulate wrath. Every statistic cited, every logical flaw exposed, was anger distilled into a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. That's the Stoic edge, recognizing that emotion isn't the enemy misapplication is. History's most effective leaders understood this. When Lincoln received vicious letters from political rivals, he'd draft passionate responses, then lock them unsigned in a drawer. The heat was real, but he refused to let it dictate action. Seneca's warning rings true here. Anger, if not restrained, is more hurtful than the injury that caused it. The injury might sting for a day. Unchecked anger can derail a decade. Contrast that with athletes like Kobe Bryant, who transformed every slight, real or imagined, into relentless training sessions. His Mamba mentality wasn't about suppressing emotion, it was about alchemizing it into reps, focus, and execution. So where's your line between combustion and propulsion? Maybe it's the coworker who takes credit for your ideas. The instinct might scream to confront them publicly, but what if you redirected that energy into building an undeniable portfolio that speaks louder than their theft ever could? Or consider parents fighting for a child's education. Ranting at school boards rarely moves the needle, but channeling that passion into research, coalition building, and data-driven proposals. That's anger weaponized. The Stoic move isn't to deny the fire, it's to control the thermostat. Seneca's On Anger outlines a drill still used by elite military units today, the pause click. When provoked, they physically press an imaginary button, creating a split-second delay between stimulus and response. In that pause choice, the heated email gets rewritten. The biting remark gets swallowed. The adrenaline surge gets redirected into a deadlift or a spreadsheet. Here's the litmus test. Next time your pulse spikes, ask, is this energy serving my mission or sabotaging it? The parent yelling at a referee isn't helping their child's team. The one coaching them after the game is. The entrepreneur fuming over a competitor's win isn't closing the gap. The one reverse engineering their strategy is. Anger is gasoline, powerful when injected into an engine, catastrophic when tossed on an open flame. Your move, where will you aim your fire today? Marcus Aurelius called it indifference to indifferent things, not apathy, but a strategic detachment that turns desperation into leverage. Picture a high-stakes poker game where one player sweats over every card while their opponent sits stone-faced. The difference isn't bluffing skill, it's the freedom that comes from genuinely not needing to win. That's Stoic detachment in action, a mental edge sharper than any negotiation tactic. When Marcus wrote, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have," he wasn't preaching nihilism. He was handing you a psychological crowbar to pry loose the grip of attachment. Consider how elite athletes approach championships. The ones who choke aren't less talented, they're just more emotionally invested in the trophy than the process. Michael Jordan's infamous flu game wasn't about wanting victory less. It was about channeling that desire into cold execution rather than white-knuckled obsession. This is the paradox. When you stop needing an outcome, you gain the clarity to achieve it. A salesperson trembling over a single deal reeks of desperation, the one who walks away from bad terms. That's when clients start chasing them. History's most effective negotiators wield this principle. When Elon Musk walked away from buying Twitter twice, he wasn't being impulsive. He demonstrated that no deal, no matter how high profile, was worth sacrificing leverage. The Stoics would have recognized the move instantly. By publicly treating billion-dollar acquisitions as indifferent, he reset the entire power dynamic. Same goes for relationships. The partner who stays in a toxic dynamic because I've invested years is valuing sunk costs over sovereignty. The one who says, I'd rather be alone than mistreated. That's detachment weaponized. So here's the gut check. What outcome has its hooks in you right now? That promotion you're obsessing over, the validation from someone who doesn't matter. The perfect conditions before you launch your idea. Marcus' genius was in recognizing that attachment doesn't increase odds, it clouds judgment. When you're emotionally yoked to an external result, every setback feels like a body blow. But when you focus solely on your effort, the one thing truly yours to command, you gain something priceless, the ability to walk away without looking back. This isn't about lowering standards, it's about raising autonomy. The entrepreneur who builds a business to serve customers, not chase investors, sleeps soundly whether the funding comes or not. The artist who creates for the sake of expression, not accolades, never has to worry about critics. Detachment isn't the absence of desire, it's the mastery of it. So ask yourself, what would you attempt today if failure stopped being terrifying and started being? Irrelevant, that's the Stoic edge, playing to win but never needing to. Churchill didn't just face the Blitz, he mocked it. When a bomb shattered his bathroom, he reportedly quipped, "Now we can take a bath together." That's Stoic humor in its rawest form, not just enduring chaos but laughing in its face. The Stoics understood something modern self-help often misses. Levity isn't the opposite of strength, it's its secret weapon. Epictetus nailed it. Man is bothered by nothing so much as his own opinions. In other words, the stories we tell ourselves about how terrible our circumstances are often hurt more than the circumstances themselves. Humor flips that script. When you can laugh at your own misfortunes, you strip them of their power to intimidate. Take the CEO who opens a disastrous earnings call with, "Well, that went worse than my first marriage." The room breathed. Tension dissolves. Suddenly, the crisis becomes a challenge to tackle rather than a catastrophe to fear. This isn't about deflection, it's about perspective. The ancient Stoics practiced self-deprecation like athletes train muscles. Marcus Aurelius journaled about his own flaws with brutal honesty, not to wallow but to disarm them. By acknowledging his shortcomings with a smirk, "Here I go again, playing the emperor when I'm just a man with too many togas," he robbed them of their weight. Consider the power of gallows humor in high-stakes professions. Surgeons cracking jokes during marathon operations, soldiers trading barbs in foxholes. These aren't signs of disrespect but psychological armor. When Viktor Frankl wrote about finding moments of laughter in concentration camps, he revealed the Stoic truth. Humor isn't denial, it's defiance. A wink at the absurdity of suffering doesn't minimize it, it proves you're still unbroken. So here's the mirror test. Where are you treating your struggles like a Shakespearean tragedy instead of a sitcom? The job rejection that feels like a dagger to your pride. Try reframing it. My future memoir needs a good rock-bottom chapter. The awkward public stumble, note to self, sidewalks are the real villains. The Stoics didn't laugh because life was easy. They laughed because it wasn't, and they refused to let it dictate their spirit. Your turn. What's the one situation you've been narrating as doom that could use a punchline instead? This isn't about toxic positivity. It's about tactical irreverence. Churchill's jokes didn't stop the bombs, but they sure as hell stopped the fear. When you can chuckle at your own ego, your failures, even your pain, you're not just surviving the storm, you're stealing its thunder. And that's the ultimate power move, letting the world see you grin while it tries to make you flinch. Diogenes lived in a barrel not because he was poor, but because he was free. While kings tripped over their own robes and merchants drowned in inventories, the original cynic proved a radical point. The less you own, the more you command. Fast forward to modern Patagonia's infamous "Don't Buy This Jacket" campaign, a billion-dollar company begging customers to reconsider consumption. Both moments share a thread the Stoics called eudaimonia, flourishing through voluntary constraint. It's not about deprivation, it's about declaring independence from the tyranny of more. When Diogenes tossed his last cup after seeing a child drink from his hands, he wasn't rejecting comfort. He was hacking the illusion that possessions equal power. Consider the math of modern minimalism. The average home contains over 300,000 items, yet studies show clutter spikes cortisol levels higher than most workplace stressors. Meanwhile, Patagonia's sales skyrocketed after their anti-consumerist ad. Why? Because they tapped into Seneca's truth. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. Not freedom to accumulate, but freedom from needing to. The executive wearing the same black turtleneck daily isn't lazy. They've weaponized decision fatigue. Every item you don't own is mental RAM reclaimed for creativity, resilience, or joy. So here's the reckoning. What's one possession that's secretly owning you? That luxury watch you fret over scratching, the overflowing wardrobe that still leaves you feeling nothing to wear. The tech gadget you upgraded just because. Diogenes would laugh at our modern cages, gold-plated, yes, but cages all the same. The Stoic minimalist isn't counting belongings, they're auditing leashes. When Patagonia urged customers to repair gear rather than replace it, they weren't just saving landfills, they were teaching a masterclass in sovereignty. Every stitch fixed is a stitch against the lie that new equals better. This isn't frugality, it's ferocity. The millionaire who flies coach isn't cheap, they're guarding their attention from the entitlement that corrodes grit. The artist with a bare studio isn't impoverished, they've cleared the stage for their masterpiece. Less becomes a weapon when you wield it like Diogenes did his lantern, not to illuminate lack, but to expose the hollow promises of excess. So ask yourself, what's the one thing you'd feel lighter without? The answer might not just free up closet space, it might free up your life. Marcus Aurelius didn't just journal, he engineered his legacy one sentence at a time. His meditations weren't meant for publication, they were mental blueprints, daily rehearsals for the man he chose to become. Fast forward to Grant Cardone's 10x rule, where he scripts his future not as wishful thinking, but as a foregone conclusion. Both men grasped a Stoic secret: your life isn't shaped by circumstances, but by the stories you etch into your mind. Epictetus put it bluntly: first say what you would be, then do what you must. The gap between those two steps, that's where narrative alchemy happens. Consider the power of pre-scripting. Athletes visualize victories before stepping on the field. Entrepreneurs draft press releases for products that don't exist yet. Even prisoners of war like James Stockdale credited survival to mentally rehearsing freedom long before it arrived. These aren't fantasies, they're cognitive frameworks. When Marcus wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts," he wasn't preaching positivity. He was handing you a chisel to carve your reality. So here's the challenge. What's the broken record playing in your head? I'm not disciplined enough. Luck never favors me. It's too late to change. Those aren't truths. They're sentences you've accidentally memorized. The Stoic rewrite starts with awareness. Catch the story mid-sentence, then interrogate it. When a CEO like Cardone declares, "I dominate every market I enter," he's not predicting, he's programming. His words aren't describing reality, they're drafting it. Try this tonight. Open a blank page and write two versions of your life, one penned by your fears, the other by your aspirations. The first might say, "I'm stuck in a dead-end job." The Stoic revision, "I'm gathering skills for my empire." Spot the difference. One is passive, the other's a plot twist waiting to happen. Journaling, as Marcus did, wasn't reflection, it was proflection. Every entry was a brick in the fortress of his character. Your turn. What's the one story you're tired of starring in? The victim, the procrastinator, the not good enough, grab the pen. History's greatest minds didn't wait for destiny, they drafted it. The page doesn't judge, it obeys. What narrative will you command it to write next? Epictetus dropped a truth bomb that still stings centuries later. No man is defeated unless he gives up. That's the heart of Stoic competition. It's not about outpacing others, but outgrowing your former self. Kobe Bryant's Mamba mentality wasn't just a catchy slogan, it was a daily war against his own limits. While rivals obsessed over his stats, he was fixated on his own film, dissecting every missed shot, every defensive lapse, every moment he could have pushed harder. The scoreboard didn't measure his victory, his private grind did. That's the Stoic edge. When you stop racing the person next to you and start chasing the ghost of who you were yesterday, you unlock a different kind of fire. Consider the absurdity of comparing yourself to others. A sprinter born with asthma competing against an Olympian with perfect genetics, where's the honor in that matchup? The Stoics' new comparison is a rigged game. Seneca wrote, "A man's as miserable as he thinks he is." And nowhere is that clearer than in the exhaustion of measuring your worth against someone else's highlight reel. Social media didn't invent this trap, it just weaponized it. The entrepreneur scrolling through Forbes lists feels inadequate, while the one tracking their own revenue growth finds momentum. Same industry, different scorecards. History's most relentless innovators understood this. Thomas Edison didn't waste energy envying Tesla's breakthroughs. He logged his own experiments like a Stoic journal, each failure a data point, not a defeat. J.K. Rowling's early rejections weren't proof she'd lost some imaginary race. They were benchmarks for her eventual leap. Even in nature, redwoods don't compete with oaks. They stretch toward their own light, measured only by their own rings. So here's the gut check. Where in your life are you running someone else's race? The gym goer side, eyeing another's deadlift instead of celebrating their own progress. The artist comparing first drafts to a veteran's masterpiece. Epictetus' warning cuts deep. When you envy another's success, you surrender your peace to their shadow. The Stoic athlete doesn't just train harder, they train smarter with a focus so inward it becomes armor against distraction. Kobe's midnight workouts weren't about beating others, they were about annihilating the player he'd been at sunrise. That's the pivot. Your real competition isn't the coworker who got promoted or the influencer with more followers. It's the you who hit snooze, skipped the extra rep, or let fear veto a dream. Every time you choose to outwork your own doubts instead of outshining strangers, you're not just winning, you're redefining what winning means. The finish line isn't crossed when you pass others. It's crossed when you stop recognizing the person who started. Seneca's definition of wealth cuts against everything modern culture screams at us. Rich is he who wants nothing. Not has everything but wants nothing. That distinction changes the game. The financial independence movement gets this people chasing not just bigger paychecks but smaller dependencies. Picture two neighbors, one drowning in car payments for a status symbol they barely drive, the other biking to work on a paid-off 10-year-old bike with a portfolio growing in the background. Who's truly wealthy? The one whose happiness isn't held hostage by monthly installments. Money doesn't make you rich, your relationship with it does. Seneca hammered this point. Money has never yet made anyone rich. It's a tool, not a trophy. Look at the tech CEO who wears the same jeans every day while quietly funding clean water projects. Contrast that with the lottery winner who spirals into bankruptcy within years. The difference isn't the amount in their accounts, it's the mindset governing those digits. The Stoic wealthy don't measure abundance by what fills their garages, but by what doesn't clutter their minds. No anxiety over debts, no desperation for approval, no sleepless nights over market swings they can't control. So here's the mirror test. What's one expense that's stealing your freedom? That gym membership you never use but keep, just in case. The subscription services bleeding $30 monthly from your account unnoticed. The luxury apartment lease eating half your paycheck to impress people you don't even like. Every dollar spent on things you don't need is a dollar traded for time you'll never get back. The financial independence crowd calls this the latte factor, the small leaks that sink great ships, but the Stoics framed it more brutally. Every unnecessary purchase is a chain you voluntarily clasp around your own ankles. This isn't about frugality for its own sake, it's about auditing your life for sovereignty. When you stop funding distractions, you start buying back your future. The entrepreneur who downgrades their car to fund a business isn't sacrificing their investing in autonomy. The family that chooses a modest home in a walkable neighborhood over a McMansion in a commuter hellscape isn't settling their purchasing hours of sunlight and family dinners. Real wealth isn't displayed on Instagram. It's measured in how calmly you can say no to opportunities that don't serve you, and how freely you can say yes to ones that do. Seneca's wisdom echoes in modern movements like FIRE, financial independence, retire early, but with a twist. It's not about retiring from work, it's about retiring from need. When your savings cover basic living costs, every choice afterward becomes intentional. You take the job for purpose, not paycheck. You travel for experience, not escape. You build not to accumulate, but to contribute. That's the Stoic wealth paradox. The less you require to be happy, the more power you wield. So ask yourself, what's one financial leak you could plug today that would buy you a little more freedom tomorrow? The answer might not just fatten your wallet, it might just liberate your life. Cleans, the Stoic philosopher who hauled water by night to fund his studies, had a revolutionary take on stumbling blocks. There are no failures, only feedback. Imagine him watching SpaceX's early rocket launches, those fiery explosions Elon Musk famously called rapid, unscheduled disassemblies. While the public saw catastrophe, Musk's team saw datasets. Every shattered piece of metal was a lesson in materials science, aerodynamics, human error. That's the Stoic pivot, treating failure not as a verdict but as a debug log for your next attempt. Truman Capote's line cuts to the core. Failure is the condiment that gives success its flavor. Without those explosive SpaceX prototypes, there'd be no Falcon 9 landings. Without Clean's calloused hands from manual labor, there'd be no groundbreaking philosophy. History's most resilient minds share this trait. They don't just tolerate failure, they interrogate it. Thomas Edison's lab wasn't just a workshop, it was a forensic lab for defeated hypotheses. When a reporter asked about his 1,000 failed attempts at the light bulb, Edison didn't wince, he reframed, "I didn't fail. I found 1,000 ways that didn't work." The Stoics would have applauded. Epictetus taught that events themselves are neutral. It's our judgments that color them as disasters. A failed business venture isn't inherently tragic. It becomes so only if you label it the end instead of the autopsy. Consider how elite athletes review game footage. The ones who plateau fast forward through their mistakes. The legends, they loop their worst plays in slow motion, dissecting every misstep like scientists studying a breakthrough. NBA coach Phil Jackson built dynasties by turning blown leads into teaching reels. His playbook wasn't just X's and O's, it was a ledger of why we lost and how we'll adapt. That's Clean's ethos in motion. Every setback is a whisper, not a scream. So here's the challenge. Pick a recent stumble, the rejected proposal, the flubbed presentation, the gym routine abandoned after 2 weeks. Now put on your Stoic lab coat. What variables can you isolate? Was it preparation, timing, a flawed assumption? SpaceX didn't just accept explosions, they instrumented them, embedding sensors in every bolt to pinpoint weaknesses. Your failures deserve the same forensic respect. This isn't about silver linings, it's about steel forging resilience through cold, hard analysis. The entrepreneur whose first startup craters isn't lucky if they learn, they're strategic, mining that rubble for blueprints. Cleans didn't mourn his poverty, he leveraged it to prove philosophy thrives outside ivory towers. Your so-called failures aren't stop signs, they're the most candid mentors you'll ever have. The question isn't whether you'll face them, it's whether you'll let them teach. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire with a simple creed. Leadership isn't about power, it's about service. While lesser emperors hoarded gold and demanded tribute, he spent nights writing reminders to himself. Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Fast forward to modern boardrooms where the most effective CEOs, from Satya Nadella at Microsoft to Hubert Joly at Best Buy, aren't barking orders from penthouse suites. They're dismantling hierarchies, listening to frontline employees, and measuring success by how many people they empower. This isn't corporate idealism, it's Stoic strategy in action. When Lincoln assembled his team of rivals, filling his cabinet with political opponents, he wasn't being naive, he was practicing preemptive humility. By surrounding himself with dissenters, he turned potential threats into advisors, friction into refinement. The Stoics called this prokopton, the discipline of continuous improvement through service. Consider the contrast between two leadership styles. One executive sees their team as chess pieces to maneuver, the other sees them as partners to equip. The former might win short-term gains, but the latter builds empires. Patagonia's Yvon Chouinard didn't just donate his company to fight climate change. He redefined what owning a business means: stewardship, not ownership. His leadership wasn't measured in quarterly profits, but in watersheds protected and workers empowered. Marcus would have recognized the move instantly. True authority doesn't come from controlling resources, but from responsibly serving them. Here's the litmus test. Who have you lifted today? Not managed, not directed, but genuinely elevated. The tech founder mentoring interns instead of schmoozing investors. The teacher staying late to help a struggling student, not for extra pay, but because it's the right thing to do. Marcus' words cut through centuries of noise. Waste no time arguing what a good leader should be. B1. Leadership isn't a title, it's a daily choice to put the collective good above personal convenience. So look around. Who's the unnoticed talent on your team waiting for a spark? The coworker with untapped potential, the junior employee with fresh eyes. The Stoic leader doesn't hoard opportunities, they create them. Lincoln's rivals didn't weaken his presidency, they strengthened it by forcing him to sharpen his ideas. Your turn. Whose growth could you invest in today? Not because it benefits you, but because it's what a true leader does. The answer might not just change their trajectory, it could redefine yours. Seneca's words echo through centuries like a drumbeat. Life is long if you know how to use it, but here's the twist most miss. Longevity isn't measured in years, but in echoes. John D. Rockefeller, the titan who once controlled 90% of America's oil, didn't just amass wealth, he orchestrated its surrender. His later years weren't spent hoarding, but channeling fortunes into universities, medical research, and a radical philosophy: die broke. Not because money didn't matter, but because legacy did. The Stoic version isn't about emptying bank accounts. It's about emptying yourself of every unused idea, every unlived potential, until your final breath leaves nothing unspent. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations on battlefields, not knowing they'd outlive Rome itself. Steve Jobs' last projects weren't about profit margins, but pushing the boundaries of design and technology. Even in fiction, Maximus' line in Gladiator, "What we do in life echoes in eternity," wasn't Hollywood fluff. It was Stoic doctrine in leather sandals. Legacy isn't posthumous PR. It's the intentional stacking of daily choices into something that outlasts your heartbeat. So here's the razor question. What's the one thing only you can contribute? Not generically, what's the singular intersection of your skills, obsessions, and the world's needs? For Rockefeller, it was revolutionizing philanthropy. For Marie Curie, it was unlocking radioactivity despite the cost to her own health. For the barrister who remembers every regular's order, it might be turning a coffee shop into a sanctuary of human connection. The scale isn't the point, the specificity is. Your legacy isn't built in grand gestures alone, but in the stubborn refusal to leave your gifts unwrapped. Think of your life as a library. Every day you're adding volumes, some bestsellers, some scribbled drafts. The Stoic approach: edit ruthlessly, keep only what deserves shelf space. When Seneca said life is long, he meant there's enough time to curate what matters. If you stop wasting pages on distractions, that's the remix. Don't just manage time, mint it into something future generations will study. Legacy isn't a finale, it's a daily discipline. The teacher who stays late to tutor a struggling student isn't just filling hours, they're etching resilience into someone else's story. The entrepreneur building sustainable practices isn't chasing trends, they're planting trees under whose shade they'll never sit. Even small acts, letters written, grudges released, quiet mentorship ripple farther than we imagine. Rockefeller's "die broke" wasn't financial advice, it was a challenge. Empty your coffers of pettiness, hesitation, and regret so thoroughly that when death comes knocking, you can look it in the eye and say, "I left nothing in the tank." The Stoics didn't fear death, they feared the unfinished life. So ask yourself, what's the one chapter only you can write? Start drafting it now, not in someday ink, but in today's sweat. The eternity you shape won't be measured in years, but in the lives that carry your fire forward. Stoic surrender sounds like a contradiction. How can you love fate while strategically retreating? The answer lies in the cold calculus of chess grandmasters. Watch any championship match, and you'll see moments where a player deliberately sacrifices a rook or bishop. To an amateur, it looks like defeat. To a grandmaster, it's a power move trading short-term loss for long-term dominance. The Stoics practiced this same razor's edge balance between acceptance and action. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "No great thing is created suddenly, not to preach patience, but to highlight the art of tactical withdrawal. Sometimes the path forward requires stepping back." Consider the entrepreneur who shuts down a failing product line after years of investment. The emotional pull is to double down. We've put so much in already. But the Stoic mindset asks a sharper question. Is this battle worth winning, or is it draining resources from the war? History's most resilient leaders know when to fold. Starbucks founder Howard Schultz initially walked away from his own company when conflicts arose, only to return later with fresh clarity that catapulted it to global success. His temporary retreat wasn't weakness, it was recalibration. Like a chess player sacrificing a piece to control the board, he traded ego for opportunity. The ancient Stoics framed this as the discipline of ascent, the ability to distinguish between what must be endured and what should be abandoned. A ship captain doesn't stubbornly sail into a hurricane to prove a point, they adjust course to survive. Similarly, the modern professional clinging to a toxic job out of sheer grit isn't practicing perseverance. They're mistaking suffering for strength. Epictetus put it bluntly, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Sometimes surrender means admitting a path no longer serves you, even if it bruises your pride. Here's the litmus test. What's the one fight you're pouring energy into that's secretly a dead end? The relationship kept alive out of habit, not growth. The project that's become a money pit, the grudge you rehearse like a favorite song. Amor Fati doesn't mean blind allegiance to every circumstance. It means loving fate enough to cut loose what's holding you back. Like a climber releasing a frayed rope to grab a safer hold, surrender isn't failure, it's survival. The Grandmaster's sacrifice only works because they see 10 moves ahead. Your strategic retreat should be just as deliberate. Maybe quitting the marathon training after a knee injury frees you to dominate cycling. Perhaps leaving a stable job unlocks time to build a legacy. Stoic surrender isn't about giving up, it's about upgrading your battles. So ask yourself, what's the one piece on your board that's costing more than it's worth? Drop it, the game isn't over, it's just getting interesting. Marcus Aurelius didn't just wake up, he declared war on complacency before dawn. His morning ritual wasn't about motivation, it was battle prep for the mind. While others hit snooze, he'd steel himself with questions like, what virtue will I practice today? And what temptations must I guard against? No candles, no mantras, just cold, tactical self-interrogation. Arnold Schwarzenegger mirrored this centuries later with his infamous no days off mentality. Even on Christmas morning, he'd lift weights in his garage first. Not because he felt like it, but because discipline isn't negotiable. The secret isn't in grand gestures, but in what the Stoics called the organization of the non-obvious, those tiny, unsexy habits that compound into unshakable fortitude. Consider the science behind this. Willpower isn't an infinite resource, it's a muscle that fatigues. Harvard studies show decision-making deteriorates as the day progresses. Judges grant fewer paroles after lunch. Doctors prescribe more antibiotics when tired. The Stoic morning ritual isn't mystical, it's neurological. By front-loading discipline, whether it's 5 minutes of journaling like Marcus or a brutal workout like Arnold, you're hijacking your brain's peak focus to cement resilience. It's not about what you do at sunrise, it's about wiring your nervous system to default to mastery. History's most prolific minds understood this. Benjamin Franklin's Virtue Journal tracked daily progress like a general's campaign log. Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps trained his body and mind to perform under sleep deprivation. So when his goggles filled with water in Beijing, his ritual-honed instincts took over and he still shattered records. Even Starbucks founder Howard Schultz starts his day with the same intentionality, writing handwritten notes to employees before checking emails, the common thread. They don't wait for inspiration, they manufacture it through repetition. So here's the challenge. What's the one micro-habit that would send shockwaves through your life? Not a dramatic overhaul, but a tiny, brutal consistency. Maybe it's drinking a glass of water before coffee to reclaim bodily agency, or spending 60 seconds visualizing your toughest task before opening your inbox. The military calls this pre-combat checks, inspecting your mental gear before engagement. Marcus didn't conquer empires by accident. He did it by designing mornings that distilled chaos into clarity. This isn't about productivity hacks, it's about sovereignty. Every time you choose ritual over whim, you're not just starting your day, you're scripting its trajectory. The Stoic morning isn't a routine, it's a rebellion against the entropy of modern life. So ask yourself, what's the smallest, most unbreakable pledge you can make to tomorrow's sunrise? Because victory isn't seized in the spotlight, it's engineered in the dark, one pre-dawn decision at a time. Aggressive Stoicism isn't about rigid rules or passive acceptance. It's a forge where discipline, action, and detachment fuse into something unstoppable. Think of it as the difference between a sword left to rust and one tempered in fire. Every principle we've explored, mastering what's yours to control, leveraging obstacles as fuel, measuring your life by legacy, not just longevity, isn't philosophy. It's a battle plan. Consider the Navy SEAL who trains in hypoxic conditions before deployment. By embracing discomfort, they turn it into an advantage. That's the essence of this mindset, not avoiding storms, but learning to steer through them. Resilience isn't just bouncing back, it's bouncing forward. When the stock market crashes, two investors react differently. One panics, selling assets at a loss. The other sees discounted opportunities, doubling down on long-term plays. Both face the same obstacle, but only one has trained their mind to spot the pivot. This is what Epictetus meant when he said, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you must." Clarity precedes conquest. The entrepreneur who scripts their vision before launching. The athlete who visualizes the podium before lacing up their not fantasizing. Their blueprinting legacy isn't built in grand gestures alone. It's the sum of daily choices to act, not just endure. Beethoven composed his greatest symphonies while deaf. Edison tested thousands of filaments before lighting the world. Their obstacles didn't block their paths, they became the paths. The aggressive Stoic doesn't wait for perfect conditions. They create them brick by brick, even when their hands are bloodied. So here's your charge. Pick one principle today and wage war on mediocrity. Maybe it's auditing your circle, cutting energy leaks, or rewriting the narratives you've outgrown. This isn't about overhauling your life overnight. It's about one decisive strike against complacency. The Roman gladiators entered the arena with a mantra, Morituri te salutant. Those who are about to die salute you. But you're not saluting death. You're saluting the version of yourself who's done waiting for permission to live fiercely. Epictetus' challenge stands. The obstacle is the way. Not around it, not over it, through it. So tell me, what's your first move? The cold email to that mentor, the gym session you've skipped for weeks, the business idea you've overthought into paralysis. Action is the language of the Stoic, and the world only bends to those who speak it fluently. The sand in the hourglass is falling, time